Lieutenant Caxton of the Hegemony's Third Fleet adjusted his ceremonial combat harness one final time as he stepped onto the sparring mat. The human exchange officer stood across from him, looking deceptively small in her standard-issue training gear. At barely 1.7 meters tall, she was dwarfed by his imposing 2.3-meter frame, her pale skin almost translucent compared to his armored carapace. "This should be educational," he murmured to his fellow Kytherian officers, mandibles clicking with amusement. "The softskins think they can compete with proper warriors." The human, Lieutenant Maria Santos, according to her file, rolled her shoulders and stretched her neck. Her movements were fluid, economical, but Caxton had seen similar grace in prey animals. It meant nothing without the strength to back it up. Instructor Velmoth, the Academy's chief combat trainer, stood at the edge of the mat with his datapad. "This is a cultural exchange sparring session." Lieutenant Caxton represents traditional Kytherian combat methodology. Lieutenant Santos represents human military doctrine. Standard rules apply: first to yield or be rendered incapable of continuing. Caxton's confidence swelled. In 300 years of Kytherian military tradition, no opponent had ever broken through their natural armor plating. His species had evolved as apex predators on a world where everything had claws, fangs, and an attitude problem. These humans, with their soft flesh and fragile bones, were clearly not meant for real combat. "I'll try to be gentle," he said, his translator rendering his words with what he hoped was appropriate condescension. "Your species is still learning about warfare, yes?" Santos said nothing. She simply took her stance, feet shoulder-width apart, knees slightly bent, hands raised in a position that looked almost casual. Caxton recognized it as some primitive fighting posture, probably descended from whatever crude brawling techniques humans had developed before achieving spaceflight. The match began. Caxton lunged forward with the speed that had made Kytherians feared throughout the sector. His species could move like striking serpents when they chose, and he had trained in the traditional forms since childhood. His clawed hand swept toward Santos in a move that would have sent any reasonable opponent flying across the mat. Santos wasn't there. She had moved, not backward, as any sane being would, but forward and to the side, slipping inside his guard with a fluidity that defied physics. Her small hands found his extended arm, and suddenly Caxton was airborne. His massive frame rotating through space with an elegance that would have been beautiful if it hadn't been so utterly impossible. He hit the mat hard, his natural armor clattering against the floor. But he was Kytherian, a warrior race. He rolled, came up fighting, and immediately lunged again. This time, Santos caught his arm. What happened next would be debated in tactical circles for years afterward. The human moved with mechanical precision, her body becoming a fulcrum around which Caxton's momentum worked against him. She stepped through, turned, and applied pressure to his elbow joint with the same matter-of-fact efficiency that one might use to open a particularly stubborn food container. The crack was audible throughout the training facility. Caxton's roar of pain and surprise echoed off the walls as he collapsed, his arm bent at an angle that nature had never intended. Santos stepped back, brushing dust from her uniform while the medical team rushed forward with emergency bone-knit equipment. "Human combat doctrine," Santos said quietly, addressing the stunned instructors, "assumes that any fight is a survival situation. We don't spar. We practice killing efficiently." Instructor Velmoth stared at his datapad, then at the broken Kytherian, then at the human who looked like she could have been knocked over by a strong breeze. "Lieutenant Santos, that was comprehensive." "Sir, Lieutenant Caxton made two fundamental errors," Santos replied, watching the medical team work. "First, he assumed size equals capability. Second, he assumed this was a game." The other Kytherian officers helped their comrade to his feet, their earlier amusement replaced by something approaching respect. Caxton, his arm immobilized in a medical brace, looked at Santos with new understanding. "Your species," he said slowly, "evolved on a death world, didn't they?" Santos nodded. "Every human learns to fight like their life depends on it, sir. Because on Earth it usually does." As the medical team escorted Caxton to the infirmary, word of the match spread through the Academy's gossip networks with the speed of light. The human exchange program, previously viewed as a diplomatic courtesy, was suddenly being taken very seriously indeed. Santos returned to her quarters, made a note in her personal log about the need to recalibrate her force estimates for non-human opponents, and settled down to study for her xenobiology exam. Just another day in the life of a Deathworlder.